to Undaunted tonight, bring you the news and short stories. I
Good evening and welcome to Undaunted, bring it into the news on Joe Stories. I am Oyi Okbala. Let's begin. Today's news delves into the heart of the ongoing liberation struggle for the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, a struggle rooted in the unshakable resolve of a people determined to reclaim their sovereignty and dignity from the clutches of colonial oppression. Since the declaration of independence in 2017, the people of Ambazonia have endured immense suffering under the heavy-handed crackdown by La Republic de Cameroon, whose actions have laid bare their blatant disregard for human rights, justice, and international law. At the center of this war is the Amazonian people's quest for self-determination, a fundamental right enshrined in the United Nations Charter. Despite this, the colonial regime of La Republique de Cameroon has waged a brutal campaign of suppression marked by extrajudicial killings, torture, rape, extortion, and the burning of entire villages. Atrocities aimed at quelling the legitimate aspiration of the Amazonian people. Yet, the resolve of the Amazonian State Army and the resilience of the Amazonian populace have proven unbreakable as they continue to push back against an occupying force that has no claim to their homeland. Adding to the plight of the Amazonian people is a regime's targeted repression of the press, a calculated move to silence voices of the truth and bury the evidence of his crime. Journalists reporting from Amazonia often face intimidation, arrest, and violence, while media outlets are raided, equipment confiscated, and broadcasting licenses revoked. The regime's strategy is clear: to control the narrative and keep the world in the dark about the atrocities it commits daily in southern Cameroon, from the forced disappearance of reporters to the harassment of media professionals. Daring to expose the regime's brutality, the colonial forces have made the press another battleground in their war on freedom. Yet, despite these challenges, the courage of Amazonian journalists, both at home and in diaspora, stands as a beacon of hope and defiance. These journalists risk their lives to document the untold stories of resilience and resistance, shedding light on sacrifices of the ASA and the unyielding determination of the Amazonian people to see their homeland liberated. Through their work, they remind the world that this is not just a war for territory, it is a war for the soul of a nation, a fight to preserve the identity, culture, and future of Amazonia. The liberation struggle has reached a critical juncture where Amazonia making significant stride in its fight for independence and with the ASA successfully defending its territory against increasingly desperate colonial forces. The road to freedom is being paved with both immense sacrifice and undeniable progress. Today's news will highlight not only the continued acts of repression by the forces of occupation, but also the extraordinary resilience of a people who refuse to bow to tyranny. Stay with us as we shine a light on the stories that matters the most, the triumphs, the tragedies, and the unwavering resolve of Amazonia to rise above oppression and claim its rightful place as a free and sovereign nation. But first, let's get the prime headlines. Here are the prime headlines. Tonight we'll start with the story of the mayor detained in connection with abduction of their divisional officer for Idabato. Law Republic, the Cameroon Minister of Territorial Administration stops Canal 2 TV from broadcasting Barrister Ali's Nkom's interview. Meanwhile, tonight in the news, patient dies after Imposter pastor removes her oxygen mask to pray. Cameroons cry out, government tax policies worsens economic hardship. Syria's hidden threats, El Julani poses new challenge for Israel. Now let's get the full news in full preference. Atongo Afange Edem, the colonial mayor of Idabato Council in Indian Atlantic Zone of the Federal and the British Southern Cameroons, has been held in detention in Boya for nearly 2 months. His detention is tied to the ongoing investigation into the kidnappings of Colonial Divisional Officer Ewane Roland. Well, in the news, we told you in November, the Colonial Gendarmerie Legion arrested Etongo following inquiries into the abduction of Ewane Roland, who has now been missing for 2 months. As part of the investigation, the colonial authorities have confiscated Etongo's phone and personal belongings. The kidnapping, which took place on the 1st of October, was allegedly carried out by a notorious pirate group known as Angel, who abducted both Ewane and other colonial council worker. Well, the group had earlier demanded a ransom exceeding 1 billion francs for their release, alongside the liberation of several colleagues currently held at Boya Central Prison. Meanwhile, several colonial mayors from the Indian area traveled to Boya to advocate for Eden's release and issued a 72-hour ultimatum, but their efforts have not yet yielded positive results. One of them expressed his frustration, saying, "We know him as a dedicated public servant. His detention feels unjust, and we hope the authorities will reconsider their stance." Okalai Belai, colonial governor for Indian, visited and pledged to uncover the identities of those responsible for the kidnapping. He suggested that the local community, which constitutes of 95% of the population, might be complicit. He alleged that kidnapped Ewane had been pressing Nigerian business people to pay taxes and cease illegal activities which may have provoked his abduction. When questioned on Etongo's prolonged detention during the December parliamentary session in La Republic de Cameroon, the Indian constituency MP Ngala Daniel Etongo, Paul Atanganji, Colonial Minister of Territorial Administration, responded saying, "We do not interfere in judicial matters, but it is crucial to conduct a thorough investigation. The mayor's belongings were taken to ascertain if he has any direct involvement in this case." While the Colonial Minister acknowledged that there is a possibility for Eden to be granted bail, he clarified that such a decision ultimately lies with the judiciary, the contingent upon the completion of the preliminary investigation. Meanwhile, there is a crackdown on the media as well. Well, this report says that the colonial regime, through the Minister of Territorial Administration, has proven that the press is not free. The Colonial Ministry of Territorial Administration is said to have ordered Canal 2 TV to refrain from broadcasting an interview with Barrister Alice Nkom. Last Sunday, December 15th, many waited for Canal 2 TV to broadcast their interview it had earlier publicized, but at nightfall, the Douala-based channel was instead showing a different program. What makes it confusing is that Canal 2 TV nor Barrister Alice Nkom have explained why the show was cancelled. As of now, many only question what she said in their interview. Kawala, leader of the Cameroon People's Party, said a call came in to her. That call to Canal 2 explains the cancellation. She accused the Colonial Ministry of Territorial Administration for holding onto that. The barrister has said in the news lately, following her standoff with Colonial Minister of Territorial Administration Paul Atanga Nji. In-house slave Atanga Nji a fortnight ago suspended 5 non-governmental organizations in the country. One of them is REDAC, which is chaired by Barrister Alice Nkom. The colonial minister equally banned REDAC too. The reason for the ban by Atanganji is that the NGO lacks transparency in the management of finances amounting to 16 billion francs. Following the ban and suspension, Colonial Divisional divisional officers swung into action, sealing offices. When the office of REDAC was sealed, Barrister Ali Nkom destroyed the seal. That has generated hits between her and the Colonial Administration. The cancellation of interview cast doubt on freedom of expression. As Canal 2 did not broadcast the interview, many accuse Minaj of clamping down on freedom of expression. Many have instead requested Minaj to also do that in other sectors that are worsening the country. A call canceled the show, Kawala leader told the public. Well, we'll definitely follow up to that and see how far that would definitely go. Meanwhile, in a different development, on Sunday, December 15, 2024, a pitiful event unfolded in the chief town of the Midland Zone, precisely at the regional hospital in Bamenda. An unidentified individual posing as a prophet disrupted critical care for a patient in the female medical ward, leading to her death. The incident occurred in a ward which accommodates over 50 patients. An official from the hospital reported that the imposter entered the ward without permission, pretending to be a caregiver, and began praying for patients. The individual approached a 54-year-old bedridden woman, removed her oxygen supply and the nasogastric tube, poured some water on her body and into her mouth. This caused the patient to become distressed, prompting caregivers to alert the nurses in a nearby ward. When the nurses arrived, they found the patient in severe distress and quickly questioned the unauthorized individuals about his action. The medical team rushed to resuscitate her, calling in doctors for assistance. Despite their best efforts for approximately 25 minutes, the patient did not survive. An audit revealed that the water administered by the imposter had entered her respiratory tract, leading to suffocation. The doctor's attempt to revive her were ultimately unsuccessful. Following the event, a crowd gathered outside the hospital, demanding answers from the so-called pastor. According to local comedian and tank crier, the man sitting on the ground with both legs chained in a video that has gone viral claims to be a pastor sent from God to heal the sick. Now that is the video. In his defense, by the way, the imposter insisted that he was a Christian on a divine mission, stating that those who questioned him could not understand his purpose. Disturbingly, after hearing about the woman's death, he reportedly laughed and suggested it was the will of God. How sad. The hospital security team was alerted and detained has detained the individual, who is now in judicial custody for investigation. Meanwhile, in another development, as 2024 comes to a close, Cameroonians are reflecting on one of the toughest years they have faced. marked by the introduction of various taxes that have only exacerbated their economic struggles. The situation is expected to worsen in 2025, with taxes doubling while the purchasing power of citizens remains abysmally low. The government tax policies have been criticized for targeting the most vulnerable members of society, including poor tomato traders, shoe menders, and small business owners. These individuals are already struggling to make ends meet, with bills, rent, school fees, and high food prices taking a significant toll on their finances. Meanwhile, ministers responsible for implementing these measures seem to be living in luxury, using taxpayers' money to purchase SUVs. This has sparked widespread outrage and frustration amongst Cameroonians in general, who feel that their government does not care about their well-being. Furthermore, approximately 22% of the finance bill is allocated towards settling foreign debts, leaving many to wonder when and why these debts were incurred and what benefits they have brought to their country as Cameroonians continue to face increased hardship, uncountable road accidents, theft, and insecurity. It is clear that the government's priorities are misplaced. On the other hand, the Ambazonian fight has been grossly ignored by La République du Cameroon's government, and it's shocking to see the extent of this neglect. For starters, the La République du Cameroon government has made no effort to address the root causes of the conflict, which began as peaceful protests against social injustice and marginalization. Instead, the government has opted for violent military suppression, hoping to terrorize the Ambazonian people into submission. This approach has only exacerbated the crisis, leading to widespread human rights abuses, displacement, and losses of lives. The La République du Cameroon government's silence on the issue is also compounded by its attempt to conceal the true nature of the conflict. They have been accused of censoring foreign communication, blocking social media platforms, and denying access to international humanitarian organizations. Furthermore, the government has tried to manipulate public opinion by labeling the Ambazonian resistance as terrorist. This is a clear attempt to deflect attention from their own role in perpetuating the crisis. It's disturbing to note that the international community has largely remained silent on the issue, despite the overwhelming evidence of human rights abuses and genocide. This silence only serves to embolden the La République du Cameroon's government in its actions. For all we know, the World Bank has been working to support Cameroon's development with a focus on reducing poverty and improving living standards. However, the government's tax policies and allocation of funds towards foreign debt repayments have undermined these efforts, leaving many Cameroonians to wonder if their government truly cares about their welfare. Oh well, and that's all we have for you on tonight's Undaunted. Coming up next is news across the globe. Prof. L. Caesar, a lecturer in the Middle East history at Tel Aviv University, has written an article titled Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. El Julani possessed challenge for Israel. In the article, Caesar discusses Syria's role in Iran's axis of evil across the Middle East, highlighting its significance as a cornerstone and driving force behind this axis. Syria has historically been a key player in the region, serving as a connecting link between Tehran, Baghdad, Gaza, and Beirut, and facilitating the flow of Iranian weapons to Hamas and Hezbollah. Assad Syria has viewed itself as a forward base in the campaign against Israel, a role it has maintained since the Six-Day War and the Yom Kippur War. Despite Syria's negative role in building a ring of fire around Israel, the country has chosen to ignore these threats, preferring to take comfort in the quite long the Golan border, while hoping Bashar would remain in power. However, with the rise of El-Julani, a new challenge has emerged for Israel. But in Iran, Iran has just put the brakes on a highly contested new dress code law, which was set to take effect this Friday. President Masoud Pezeshkian has deemed their legislation ambiguous and in need of reform, indicating that he's open to reassessing its measures. The proposed law, which have introduced harsher punishments for women and girls who expose their hair, forearms, or lower legs, rights activists have been vocal in their criticisms of the law, and it's not hard to see why. The strict dress codes imposed on women and girls in Iran have been a major point of contention for decades, with many viewing them as a threat to personal freedom. It's worth noting that these dress codes have been treated as a national security priority by Iran rulers, which has led to widespread protests in the past. Only time will tell what the future holds for the controversial law. Israel is likely to finally respond to Yemen's hottest post has learned. Well, Israel is likely to respond to Yemen's post in the coming weeks following another ballistic missile attack by the Iranian proxy. The IDF air defense intercepted a ballistic missile fired by Yemen's Houthis, setting off Syrians across central Israel. This isn't the first time Israel has faced attacks from Yemen's Houthis. In recent months, there have been several incidents, including a drone attack on Tel Aviv in July that killed one person and injured 10 others. Israel has already taken actions against the Houthis in Yemen. In September, Israel launched an airstrikes on the ports of El Hudadai and Ras Issa, killing 6 people and injuring at least 57. The attacks targeted fuel facilities, power stations, and docks, causing widespread power outage in the area. It's clear that Israel is taking the threat from Yemen's Houthis seriously and is prepared to take action to protect its citizens. And that's all we have for you on tonight's Undaunted. But before we go, let's take a look at the major stories. Well, tonight on Undaunted, we told you that another mayor has been detained in connection with the abduction of the Idabato Divisional officer. La Republic, the Cameroon Minister of Territorial Administration, has stopped Canal 2 TV from broadcasting Barrister Alice Nkom's interview. Patient dies after Imposter pastor removes her oxygen mask to pray. Told you tonight that Cameroonians are crying out as government tax policies worsens economic hardship. Meanwhile, on the global scene, we talked about Syria's hidden threat as El-Julani poses new challenge for Israel. That's it for tonight's Undaunted. Bring into the news on Joe Stories. On behalf of the technical team behind tonight's production is good night and God bless you from here.